Coming over from the library. It's a 3-minute walk, so I thank everyone for your patience. We'll get there. Thank you.
Meeting of the Troy Planning Commission. And again, thank you for your patience as we work through the technical issues. Copies of the agenda for tonight's meeting are available at the entrance to the room. Additionally, the agendas and minutes of prior meetings are available on the city's website. The meeting will be conducted in accordance with the agenda as presented or amended by the Planning Commission. The roles and responsibilities of the Planning Commission are outlined on the reverse side of tonight's agenda. State law establishes planning commissions. The commission is comprised of 9 members, all of whom have volunteered to serve. Members are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by city council. The other individuals seated at the table this evening are representatives of the city's planning department, the city's attorney's office, and the city's planning consultant, Carlisle Wortman Associates. If you wish to address the planning commission, please come forward when recognized and provide your name and address on the sign-on sheet. Please begin your remarks by stating your name for the benefit of the commissioners. All remarks are to be addressed to the Planning Commission, not to anyone else in the room. At this time, I ask that all cell phones, Blackberries, PDAs, and any other devices that might disrupt this meeting, please either be placed in silent mode or be turned off. Ms. Sarnicki, the roll call, please.
Mr. Abhidian.
Here.
Ms. Cruz. Mr. Faison.
Here.
Ms. Fowler.
Here.
Mr. Hudson.
Here.
Mr. Krent.
Here.
Mr. Rahman.
Here.
Mr. Tagle. Mr. Tadapali.
Here.
Thank you. So quorum is present. Item number 2 on tonight's agenda is the approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson, and a second? Mr. Sadik.
Mr.
Vote, please.
Faison.
Yes.
Ms. Fowler.
Yes.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
Mr. Krent.
Yes.
Mr. Rahman.
Yes.
Mr. Abhidian.
Yes.
Item number 3 on tonight's agenda is the approval of the minutes of the February 12th, 2019 meeting. Moved by Mr. Abhidian, seconded by Ms. Fowler. Ms. Sarnicki?
Mr. Faison.
Yes.
Ms. Fowler.
Yes.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
Mr. Krent.
Abstain.
Mr. Rahman.
Yes.
Mr. Abhidian.
Yes.
Motion's carried. The next item on the agenda is item number 4, public comment for items that are not on tonight's agenda. Would anyone like to make a comment on an item that's not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I'll move to item number 5. Preliminary site plan review. Conditional rezoning, file number CR JPLN 2018005. Proposed Long Lake Square Townhomes, south side of Long Lake, west of Livernois, 121 West Long Lake, parcels 88-20-16-200-007 and 008. Section 16, from R1B, One Family Residential District, to NNM, Neighborhood Node M District. Mr. Carlisle.
Thank you and good evening. To make up for lost time, I'm going to go through this very quickly. The applicant tonight is requesting to conditionally rezone a 1.8 acre site. A condition of the rezoning as offered by the applicant is the site plan as submitted. As the chairman alluded to, the site is currently zoned one family residential and the applicant is seeking a rezoning to neighborhood node. The site is located on the south side of Long Lake, just west of Livernois. It's adjacent to the Ridgedale Players site and next to the commercial strip mall on the corner. The 1.8 acre site includes 2 parcels. I do want to note to the Planning Commission and the public, this is the same site that was originally proposed for a self-storage facility. That self-storage facility was ultimately denied by rezoning by the City Council. As again alluded to, the condition of the rezoning is the site plan as submitted. The site is surrounded by R1B to both the west and to the south, and is surrounded by NN neighborhood node to the east, and to the north is RT zoning. The Planning Commission should be familiar with this site. This is the second time the Planning Commission has seen this proposal in front of you. However, there has been some significant changes to the development since last seen by the Planning Commission. The first significant change is the applicant has actually reduced the number of units from 30 to 27, so it's a drop of 3 units. In addition, they have significantly reconfigured the site. If you remember before, and I'm going to use my little red dot if it shows up. They had the site laid out, basically rows similar to this, extended on this direction as well. What they end up doing is flipping these and running these now parallel to the property line, to the eastern property line. So it gives a much more unified and connected site than what was originally seen. In addition, they have removed, there was a proposed driveway along the south end of the site that has been removed, and it gives an increased buffer to the single-family residential that's to the south. They have increased the rear yard setback. In addition, they have preserved a regulated wetland, a non-regulated wetland, but it's nonetheless still a wetland. They preserved a wetland in the southwest corner of the site. They've also added community gathering space in the central location of the site, as well as down here. They've added gathering space. They reduced the proposed height from approximately 33 feet to 30 feet in height. They provide a complete tree survey, and in addition, they've added 2 additional guest parking spaces to the site. So those are the changes since the Planning Commission has last considered the item. When we consider rezoning, we also like to consider what could be done by right versus what is being proposed. The significant difference between what's proposed and what can be done by right is simply the number of units. The applicant is proposing 27 units, which would exceed what can be done by the R1B. It should be noted, though, that the height is the same as what could be done under R1B, which is the surrounding zoning to the south, as well as the setbacks are actually pretty much the same as what could be done under the current R1B zoning. As noted, the site does include 2 non-regulated wetlands. Wetland A, which is in the southeast corner of the site, is approximately 10,000 or so square feet. The applicant is able to preserve a significant portion of that, as shown as their site plan. If the Planning Commission remembers the last site plan seen by the Planning Commission, that wetland was completely gone. And so this is a significant change and improvement upon the last site plan. Regulated wetland B, which is in the center of the site, is approximately 1,000 square feet. That will be gone as part of this development. In addition, the applicant has identified 3 landmark trees. Those 3 landmark trees will be removed. However, all tree mitigation will be done on site. With regards to traffic, when we look at traffic, one thing we do is we compare it to what can be done by right. Under a by right development, the expectation is that there would be an additional approximately 14 additional trips per day as a result of this development. And the traffic concluded by the OHM, who's the traffic consultant to the city, recommends that would be a minimal increase on traffic upon Long Lake, and they do recommend approval of the rezoning in regards to the traffic study. The applicant has provided additional buffer, as I noted, especially along the rear property line with the preservation of that wetland. They are also providing a significant landscape buffer along the east, west, and the northern property line, and the buffer along the south has been increased to approximately, at a minimum, is 22 feet at the narrowest point, and up to a much more distance when you actually account for the wetland buffer in itself. So it is a pretty significant buffer along the southern property line. The elevations that are proposed by the applicant are similar to the ones that the applicant has built at Bradley Square, and they can go into more detail about those elevations, but you see them in front of you. Primarily a masonry material on the first floor with a siding material on the second floor. This is actually a picture of the as-built Bradley Square, so this is what it will look like when finished. This is a site rendering of the site from a bird's eye view based on the proposed layout. You'll notice in the back southeast corner of the site, which would be in the upper right-hand corner, that's where the wetland buffer is going to be in the significant buffer to the south, single family. The applicant is asking for both a special use approval as well as rezoning. There are standards that we use to consider this. This includes compatibility with adjacent uses, compatibility with the master plan, traffic impact, impact on public services, compliance with the zoning ordinance standards, whether or not the rezoning will impact public health, safety, and welfare, and whether or not this will cause an increase in any nonconformity. We do find that the site does meet the required standards. The use of residential is not contrary to the master plan and was actually an expressed use as noted by residents when the self-storage site was being considered. The applicant has utilized a creative layout to protect open space as well as protect the wetland on site. The site can be served by public services, as well as the condition of the site plan actually guarantees protection to adjacent single-family residential to the south. So with all that being said, we do find that the application has addressed many of the concerns raised by the Planning Commission. We do find the required standards have been met, and we do recommend rezoning, special use approval, and preliminary site plan. Again, the Planning Commission is a recommending body on these 3 items, and ultimately your recommendation will go to the Planning Commission, the City Council for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Any questions from the Planning Commission for Mr. Carlisle? Mr. Hudson.
Mr. Carlisle, I don't think I heard it, but looking at the site, what percentage is going to be open space and greenery?
Can you just give me a few seconds to look at the plan, and I'll get you an answer here in a few seconds? It's not easily written in my report for some reason.
Sure.
Do you want us to hold other questions until you...
Ask another question, and I'll get to that in a second.
Any other questions for Mr. Carlisle? I had one. Can you go back to the PowerPoint, the Bradley Square picture you had? And so my question is are those the renderings, or is the color palette different for this one?
The color palette appears to be different. However, the elevations in terms of the architectural details is going to be similar to what this is being proposed.
Understood. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Jim Clark from Robertson Brothers is here.
Okay.
He would be probably the person most capable of answering that question. And he gave us a very brief PowerPoint presentation that we'd like to give him an opportunity to present the project as well.
So let's see. Are there any other questions for Mr. Carlisle?
And we'll also look up the answer to Mr. Hudson's question.
Understood. Then if not, let's let the applicant present.
Jim Clark, 6905 Telegraph Road, Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, Robertson Brothers Homes. Our answer to the open space question is 34% open space. Ben will confirm whether we're right or wrong, but that's the way our...
I just saw it, yes. It's actually 0.65 acres, which is 34% of the site.
Perfect. Okay. A lot of this will be repeat, 1.88 acres, currently R1B, looking to adhere to the master plan of NN neighborhood node and extend it. As we talked about, open space is required at 20% and would be at 34.58%. As Ben noted, we decreased the number of units. What we heard at the last meeting was you didn't like the height of the buildings, the density of the project, the site amenities, the connectivity, the snow removal, or the architecture. So we attacked each one of those and tried to make changes in all of them. So we went to a different elevation and a split grade, so the actual driveways on these units will be depressed, less visible from the street. The fronts are not necessarily raised, they're just on grade, so you have the not appearance, but the actuality of a 2.5-story home, not a 3-story massing as we showed you last time. You know, we did reduce the density by about 1 unit per acre. We did add in our plan, we added some what I think are significantly larger open spaces in the center between 7, 8, and 9 and 15 to 18. As Ben had pointed out, we preserved a non-regulated wetland, and then we heard about connectivity, so we put 2 pathways, one to the south, the Partridge Drive, and then one to the east, so pedestrians could get to the retail. As you can note, the overall site was reconfigured and got rid of the barracks-like layout that we had before. We heard about snow removal, and so there are, if you will, dead-end areas where snow can be put up. I don't want to say piled up, but can be pushed up in a 15 to 20-foot area, and certainly to the south end, outside of the wetland, we can still put snow up in that area, and we do have adequate areas for it, because I know that was a concern. I would like to pass out color packs. It would be our proposal is in addition to the different architecture to use a 3 different color package, 3 different types of brick, 3 different sidings, 3 different individual colors. And our proposal, subject to your concurrence, and would be to start with the 2 front buildings at 2 different colors, and then march down to building 6, 7, or 7, 8, and 9, a different color, and then repeat the 3. So when you look at it at any one time, you will not have the same look.
Thank you. So just a quick question. In that example you just gave, would 7, 8, and 9 be the same color, or would they be 3 different colors? There'd be different colors for the contiguous units.
The building would be this. We'd make all the buildings the same color, and then we would vary the building colors. So I don't have red, white, and blue, red, white, and blue. I'd have a red building, a white building, and a blue building. So, for instance, 4, 5, and 6 would have color package number 1. 1, 2, and 3 would have colored package number 2. And just because of the change, I think it would get busy changing the color of the brick every 20 feet. You're massing on a lot of these is a 60-foot mass, which is big for a single-family home, but it's not. Every 20-foot changing brick, I think, would start to get busy, at least in our opinion. Now, I'm not. But we've done this in the past in other projects, and it does give a nice variety, and it doesn't. Then you don't have all one taupe building color throughout all 27 units. So we think it would be a nice addition. With that, I'm here to answer questions. We're delighted with the redo. We hope we're most improved, and we hope we listen to the feedback we heard last time.
Does anyone have a question for the applicant? Mr. Hudson?
Mr. Clark, you've done a nice job.
Thank you.
I do have one question. The pedestrian exit entrance to the shopping center to the east, it goes into an active parking lot. Is there going to be any kind of demarcation on that parking lot that it may be a pedestrian entrance, or have you talked with the owner of that shopping center about maybe some safety features there?
No, we haven't, and we need to. We showed it. We, of course, have the sidewalk up on the north side, but that doesn't provide any additional connections, and we can come back to you and tell you what our findings are with the. I'm sure he's going to be resistant to giving up parking spaces, but if we make the connection further to the south, I think there's less parking in the back of the shopping center, maybe up versus up where we showed the connection, which is up in this area here. So I think somewhere in this run we will be able to get a striped connection point. I think that's reasonable. He's going to want our people to shop at his.
I'm sure he will.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I feel confident. He's a reasonable man. I just have not talked to him about this plan.
Okay.
Mr. Krent?
Again, Mr. Clark, you did a nice job of updating us, making it look less barrack-like. I appreciate that, and I like the idea, what you said about the colors. Keeping the colors the same on every grouping makes a lot of sense to me, because then it looks like a unified building, not a bunch of patchwork.
Yes.
So I think your logic and my eye appeal is in the same line. The only thing is about that entrance to the parking lot off of your property into Trevero's area.
Yes.
Actually, where it is a better location than going farther south, because a lot of people park. I mean, your illustration shows it, but that's just illustration. I know, because I've been going there for 40 years. Everybody parks closer to the building, to Trevero Hardware on that side of the shopping center.
So that works.
The north would, yes, going farther north would be a better solution. I'm sure the owner will probably agree with that.
And we will report back. We'll leave it there. That's where we'd like it. I just wasn't sure where.
I think it's a good location.
Great.
Mr. Abhidian.
Just one question. I see that 4 visitor parking spaces were added just east of Unit 18. Are those parallel parking spaces that were added there?
Yes. Yes.
So those are the only 4 spaces on site that are parallel. All the others are just your standard parking spaces.
And we will control parking on behalf of residents in that you're not allowed to have third and fourth cars. Obviously overnight guests are okay and we'll do this through the condominium documentation, but you're not allowed to just have a covered car sitting out as a resident, and that the association will ticket and tow if that's the case. Now, if you've got guests, they can stay overnight, but that's not permanent cars.
Mr. Abhidian.
One more question. The pedestrian connectivity to the south there, did you at all reach out to the neighbors in that neighborhood? Because we actually had, I think with the previous project that was discussed when the actual storage facility was added, that was kind of something that was brought up to try to connect to the neighborhood to the south, and the neighbors actually opposed, if I recall correctly. So is that something that, so you have not reached out to the neighbors on that at all?
No, what I think we heard was that the board, the planning commission wanted connectivity, and we are remiss in not reaching out to either one of them, but we will. So we're willing to do it. We're showing where we'd like to do it, and we'll make sure that they're okay with it. I think you have the right as Troy to say we can make the connection if in fact that's what you want, because we are outletting to a right-of-way, so that between Partridge Drive and that our property line is dedicated right-of-way. Not that we want to do something the neighbors don't want, but the property belongs to Troy, not to the neighborhood. If that's a relevant point, it depends on how much you want connectivity. I think the right thing to do is ask them and talk to them, but.
Anything else for the applicant?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice job. Just to ask, is there any need for further discussion, or do we think we're ready for a resolution?
It's not a public hearing, but
It's not a public hearing. We held a public hearing.
Right.
There may be some residents who it's your purview.
I would welcome any resident who would like to speak on this project to come to the microphone and speak. Okay? Seeing none. Thank you for the clarification, but seeing none. I'd ask if there are any other questions from the Planning Commission, or if we're ready for a resolution. And the resolution is the one we handed out?
I noticed a minor error in the resolution. I didn't clarify that there was also, besides making a recommendation on the conditional rezoning and the preliminary site plan, you're also making a recommendation on special use approval. So I added the verbiage.
Okay.
So anyone who makes the motion, if they would read the paper versus the version on the screen.
The application doesn't include the 3 color packages. We would certainly want to do that, and I don't know whether it needs to be amended with the motion. It wasn't in the submission, so we're adding it. So,
Is that something we would do administratively?
So that was voluntarily offered by the applicant, so maybe Julie, feel free to chime in here, but maybe the maker of the motion can reference the color package, 3 color package that was voluntarily offered at tonight's meeting.
So, Mr. Friend, is that how the...
Yeah, that
Okay,
was, yeah,
just
sorry.
motion.
I would nodded my head. I'm sorry. Yes.
So would anybody like to read the motion?
And where that could fit in, Mr. Chairman, is that for the resolve, the Planning Commission recommends the following site plan design considerations. It can be the Planning Commission supports the addition of the color package, 3-color package voluntarily submitted by the applicant at the meeting this evening.
You looking to me? Okay. Resolved that the Planning Commission hereby recommends to the City Council that the R1B to NNM conditional rezoning request, which incorporates preliminary site plan approval and special use approval as per section 16.04 of the City of Troy zoning ordinance located on the south side of Long Lake Road, west of Livernois, within section 16 being approximately 1.877 acres in size, be granted for the following reasons. Number one, the request complies with the master plan. 2, the form-based district would permit greater flexibility in use and development of the property. 3, the conditions offered by the applicant reasonably protect the adjacent properties. 4, the rezoning would be compatible with surrounding zoning and land use. Number 5, the site can be adequately served with municipal water and sewer. 6, the development of the property should not unreasonably impact adjacent properties. Be it further resolved that the Planning Commission recommends the following site plan design considerations, which are to incorporate the color palettes voluntarily presented by the developer.
Need a second?
Support.
Mr. Hudson. Ms. Sarnick?
Ms. Fowler?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krant?
Yes.
Mr. Rahman?
Yes.
Mr. Abhidian?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
So just reminder to the Planning Commission, this is a recommendation. Because it's a rezoning, it must go before City Council. And we don't have a meeting scheduled yet, but I'm sure Robertson Brothers will be looking forward to us scheduling that public hearing in the immediate near future.
Thanks. Motion passes. And I concur with some of the other comments that my Planning Commissioner colleagues made. I think this site plan is a significant improvement over the one we saw previously. So we appreciate that. Yeah. The next item on the agenda is item number 6. Special use and preliminary site plan review. File number SU-JPLN2018-0007. Proposed Holiday Inn Hotel east of Crooks Road, north side of Tower, 900 Tower, Section 9, currently zoned OM. Mr. Carlisle.
Thank you. This site should be familiar again to the Planning Commission. I believe this is the 3rd time that we've considered this site and 2nd time we've considered this specific proposal. The applicant is proposing a Holiday Inn at this location at the corner of Crooks and Tower. The last Planning Commission, we spent a lot of time talking about site layout, traffic, parking impacts, and I think a lot of those issues were put to bed. And the 2 outstanding issues that remain were the applicant was deficient in the required landscaping, and there was a long discussion on the proposed elevations. The applicant has come back with addressing those 2 issues. Specifically with regards to landscaping, they were deficient for the required greenbelt trees along the southern property line that are adjacent to Tower Drive. They have added those trees and they are compliant with the ordinance requirements with regards to all landscaping. The second point of discussion was on elevations, and specifically the use of ephes along the front elevation, specifically the tower above the front entrance, as well as a lack of detail in the rear elevations. The applicant has revised their elevations, and they've actually offered up a couple of options for the Planning Commission to discuss. I'm not an architect. I'm not going to go into detail about what they're proposing. The applicant is here. The applicant's architect is here to address any specific questions with regard to architecture. So with that, I'm going to offer up any questions from the Planning Commission and then hand over to the applicant to discuss further detail about the elevations.
Any questions from the Planning Commission for Mr. Carlisle? Seeing none, I'll invite the applicant up to speak.
Thank you. Tufik Bentahar, I'm the architect with the Mayor Lodge on this project. Thank you again for your consideration for this project. Since our last meeting on February 12th, we heard the comments from the Planning Commission, and we want to make sure that we addressed all of them, and we have made some revisions accordingly. So the changes we have made, the first one has been discussed is about landscaping, and we have complied entirely with the requirements by adding the trees on the south end of the property. The second point that we had discussed during our last meeting is regarding the elevations. And one of the main comments, a couple of comments actually, and I would like to focus on these two items. One had to do with the rear elevation, where we presented, what we presented shows a long stretch of a building, and the comments we heard were that we needed to do something, specifically the back of the building, to break a little bit that very long elevation by introducing, the way we did it, we introduced a couple of architectural features, and we also made use of the change of material. It's the same material of brick, but changing the colors of the brick to bring a little bit of variation in the rear facade. The front elevation, the comment we have heard, and it's up on the screen here, is that the mechanical grills that you see on the elevation to the left give the impression that they were randomly organized, and that was the case. So what we did, we reorganized the layout of the room to make sure that these grills were at least on the elevations looked like they had a better organized pattern. And that's what we did. It's a little hard to see on the right-hand side there, but we'll see it when we look at the rendering. But if you look at the elevation at the bottom of the screen, you can see this grills. They're grouped by twos on each floor, where in a previous rendering on the top left, you can see that there's a random placement of these grills. So I believe that helped quite a bit, give a little bit of sense of organization of the facade. The other element has to do with the use of getting rid entirely of the ephes on the facades, except for the trim at the top of the building and some thin patterns around the building, horizontal patterns. So if you look at if you could see the next, oh, I'm sorry, I control. Okay, so that's the front facade elevation. So we get brick, and we have this, we played with a two-tone brick, the darker and the lighter, and you can see that the mechanical grills are a little better organized, and I think that gives a more unified look at the facade. Now for the rear elevation, I had mentioned earlier that if you look at the bottom right corner, this is what we had before with this long stretch of a building, and we introduced these options A and B, and that gave a little bit of a rhythm to the facade. And as was mentioned earlier, we introduced these two architectural features, option A and B. I'm partial to one of them, and I'll be curious to see what the Commission thinks about those. And the effect of those features break a little bit the monotony of the rear elevation, and I think it gives a little bit of a rhythm. If you have any questions, I'm happy to help.
For option A or option B, it's just at those 2 points on the building?
Yes.
Or do they repeat?
So No, on the rear elevation, we're trying to see, we will repeat them. If we opt for option B, both of them will have a flat top. And if we opt for option A, they'll both have an arched top. So that's what the rear elevation will look like.
Understood, so it'll be only those
That is correct.
areas
That
where
is
you'll
correct.
do that, have that treatment. Okay.
That is correct.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Just a quick comment.
Yeah,
I'll
Mr.
go
Brent.
with option A,
You like option A better?
only because it adds some kind of a curve to a very rectilinear building. Just all right angles everywhere, and just,
Right.
it adds a bit of softness, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
Mr. Ram?
I see the windows or maybe a couple of doors there.
On the first floor?
On the first floor.
Yep.
On the far right, there are windows. The frames are more thinner. Can it be symmetric or thicker frame for the windows? Because the white part that we see on the left side is more prominent than...
You're talking about this here?
No, those two.
Right here?
Yeah.
And again, what,
The
could you repeat,
frames,
please?
the window frames,
Yeah.
thicker.
Oh, thicker so they,
I think
so they get closer in appearance to the ones to
So
the
that,
left?
yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I think
Because,
they have
the
they
rear
have-
side seems like, it's not, we're not paying attention to that side, and then those windows, the white windows, and then the door, can they match the
Okay,
color?
I understand what you're saying. Yeah,
Can
give
they
them a
match
little
the
more
color?
pop with, yeah.
Color of the brick or the stone that you have, so that it doesn't really stand out. That is a door to get out and.
Okay, we'll mark them so they're more visible and more in tune with the other,
Yeah, exactly.
Storefront.
So they're more symmetric, and it's not like.
certainly.
And I like with Tom your idea that a little bit of curvature would give.
So that's 2 votes for option
Break
A?
the monotony, just like it's all square.
And for voting, I'll go for A also.
This is just an idea, and then you ask the same question. Can we repeat one more time on the left side, that arch, or if we just...
It was in my mind at the beginning. I was a little hesitant because because you group 2 columns of windows, if we do that, you're too close either to the edge of the big building to the left or too close to the feature, the tower there. The idea is not to have, see it right here? That was the main issue right here. Because this is not that long, and when you do that, you pretty much have the same proportions along the whole elevation. If we introduce that, it will look like it was forced in, I think.
Yeah, okay, no, I think
Okay.
it's good.
I vote for A.
Ms. Fowler, so voting for A, Mr. At-Bahadian.
Yeah, I think option A also breaks up if you're going for the whole aspect of breaking up the linear, even though you don't have any arched windows, that may just be the feature to add to actually break that up a little bit.
This is not the only curved shape in a project. In the front of the building, on the first floor, the pre-function in front of the banquet is all a curved wall. So it's not a totally foreign element in a project if we decide to go with A.
Mr. At-Bahadian.
What is the dimension of that additional
Oh, how much it protrudes?
protrudes out? I mean, what is that?
It's minimal.
Is that just
we talk-
one brick layer, or is that
That is correct.
one brick layer?
Yeah, it's enough to see a difference, and I think with the light and the shadows, you'll see it. It'll be visible.
I think in that rendering, it might look like it might be a little bit more than 4 or 5 inches, maybe.
Yeah,
it looks
it
like
is
it might
a
be
little
8 or
bit-
9 inches.
Yeah,
So that, in reality, it's very
it's
minimal.
gonna be a little bit, but very visible because we play with that. It protrudes a little bit, as well as the color of the
Oh,
brick.
the brick is different.
So that helps mark that.
Anything else for the applicant?
One question, I think some of us may be curious to know, what was your choice, A or B?
B?
Okay. You like things square.
Okay. Mr. Apahidia.
One more question. The actual front elevation shows the white bands, the horizontal bands. Are those actually what you were referring to earlier as being the added out of EFIS?
Those are that is correct.
So those don't continue on the other elevations?
They do continue here.
Okay.
Yeah, it is continuous, and that helps unify a little bit the building. I think it's going to look like nice.
Anything else for the applicant?
I think I like the two-tone brick. Two-tone and the elimination of the EFIS.
You like the two-tone?
Two-tone brick.
Okay, very good.
No, I would agree. I think you've addressed a number of our concerns, and I'll go with the rest of the planning commission. I vote for A also.
It's not B?
Yeah. Thank you. Public?
Sure.
Yeah. Does anyone from the public like to speak on this project? Looks like none. I'll ask if we're ready for a resolution. But I'll also ask, have we determined what we want the additional windows and doors to look like? The changes on the back of the building, and do we need to specify that in the resolution?
The suggestion that Mr. Rahman made, you're
Yes.
specifically talking
Yes.
about?
If I may?
Yep.
I think they are really the same in terms of treatment. The angle, and this is a rendering, so it's not always true to what it's going to be. But the treatment of this window frames, the storefront, is going to be exactly the same. So it will look the same.
Okay, that's good. Because, in this...
It's hard to tell from there,
It
yeah.
looked like it was not paid attention to, which
Yeah.
doesn't look good.
It's the angle of
Right,
view.
'cause,
And
the whole thing will be seen when you are driving on Tower Drive,
Correct.
right? So you will see that the left side is nicely done, but the right side is not done properly, So
No,
you just need to
understood.
have some
No,
symmetry in terms of,
we'll make
paying
sure we bring the
attention.
same treatment
Yeah.
to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Somebody else want to read it this time?
Yeah, I was going to say, are we ready then for a resolution?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Last time we discussed this matter, I believe it was Mr. Hudson wanted to see a shared parking agreement. I wanted to make, I have not seen a shared parking agreement, so you may want to incorporate that into your resolution. Was that you, Mr. Hudson? Maybe.
I recall us discussing that, and then it was an agreement in perpetuity, but we had just not had seen the agreement. Is that
Right.
Okay.
And there was concern about that last time from someone.
Yeah,
And I just-
and they said it would be in perpetuity.
Yeah, my recollection is Mr. Hudson asked the question about the length of the agreement, and it was clarified by the applicant that it would be in perpetuity, and Mr. Hudson was okay with that.
I am.
So then we don't need to add that to the resolution. Okay.
Ask our attorney.
That's what I'm asking. Yeah.
No, I just wanted to make sure that the point from last time was brought up. If Mr. Hudson is satisfied, then that's fine.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. So with that, I do think we're ready for a resolution, aren't we? You gonna read it, Mr. Hudson?
If I can find it. Yeah, what page is it?
62.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, if I can... my computer doesn't show pages.
It's usually near the beginning of the
All right.
item.
No, I think I see it. Be it resolved that special use approval and preliminary site plan approval pursuant to Articles 8 and 9 of the zoning ordinance is requested for the proposed Holiday Inn Hotel east of Crooks Road, north side of Tower, parentheses 900 Tower, in parentheses, Section 9, currently zoned OM, office mixed-use district be granted.
I'll second.
Support from Mr. Krantz. Ms. Sarnecki?
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krantz?
Yes.
Mr. Rahman?
Yes.
Mr. Abhidian?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Ms. Fowler?
Yes.
Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is item number 7. It's public comment for items on the current agenda. Does anyone in the audience want to make a comment on an item that's on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I'll go to item number 8, Planning Commission comment. And I'll start with Mr. Abhidian.
Just a couple comments about both projects that we had tonight. I think the Long Lake Square project, the applicant listened, came before us, made significant changes, more open green space, and ended up being a better project in the end. And also the Holiday Inn, the applicant again listened, but was more restricted in terms of the flexibility he had to make the changes based on the actual Holiday Inn requirements. And I think whatever he came up with was significant enough to actually provide that variety and provide that improvement to the facade and to the elevation. So I really like the changes that were brought forth for both projects tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Fowler.
I concur, but no other comments.
Thank you. Mr. Hudson.
No comments.
Ms. Krantz.
Just one comment. I'd just like to see that the smaller entry-level homes are also coming in Troy, so we can have like new families to come and we can have kids,
Right.
and go to schools. It's a very important thing for the school district, so thank you.
Good point. Mr. Frame?
Nothing, thank you.
Nothing.
Ms. Carlisle? Ms. Tatapelli? Ms. Zarnicki?
No, thank you.
Nothing from me either, and we are adjourned.
Very good.